We'll make it quick. You're hungry.
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry.
Happened in the 90s.
Matt was the fat kid, Steve was the flat kid. Life wasn't always great, but you know what was? The 90s. Happened in the 90s. Yeah!
That's right. Happened in the 90s. You're listening to Podcastle. Don't forget to check us out on X at _Podcastle. And I'm super stoked for today's show. We have Steve Garrett and Matt Getic from, I think, the definitive 90s podcast / channel in the world, Happened in the 90s. So thank you guys so much for coming on. How are you?
Loving it. Loving life. Thanks for having us, bud.
Yeah, of course.
Winning.
I want to remind our listeners just to check them out online. You guys have been doing this. This is the 4th season of Happen in the 90s, correct?
Yeah, man. But we've been pre-gaming, you could say, for years, since
For
our
years,
teens.
for 30
Yeah,
years,
we've had
right?
these conversations. Yeah. Damn, are we that old? Damn.
God, since junior high though. I mean, it's been decades in the making. So
Who's better? Okay, so I'm grappling with that middle age thing. I'm your age, I think, around there. I'm 42. I think you guys might be a little bit younger, but it's like kind of tough for when I hear somebody make a reference like or at work or whatever, like, hey, I was born in 97. I was like, I remember 97. I think I first got laid in 97. Why is this why this isn't right? I'm still young. I'm still doing things. It's just I don't know. I think do you guys grapple with that? Does that bother you at all? That kind of thing?
All the time.
All the
yeah,
time.
All,
yeah.
all the time, man.
I'm
Um,
shocked that you're younger than us. I've known you for a while, and I always thought you were like a couple years younger than me. But I mean, first of all, you look fantastic. So don't feel old.
oh,
Uh,
thanks. You guys look great too. You
well,
have that
I'm working on it,
we
but
have that Ohio, Pennsylvania blood going through us. It keeps us younger.
just the Midwest.
It's the Midwest.
Fatty foods and drugs. It mixes well. It's like a skincare regimen.
We were it is. The thing I love the most about happened in the 90s, and I mean this genuinely, I'm not blowing smoke, is you're very consistent with it. There's a lot of podcasts that start off and like after a year, maybe even if they get that far, they drop off. But you guys are religiously consistent and it gets better. I mean, I just think
Thanks,
that's such
bud.
a smart thing to do is the 90s because you're never going to run out of material. You have a built-in audience and you know your shit too. I mean, I watched and I listened to the show and I'm like, wow, they just it's an education. What made you do like the 90s? Like how did it come about doing happen in the 90s?
I'm gonna let
Well,
Steve take that.
and
Whose
when I
baby
still
was
lived
it?
in when I still lived in Texas, I started a podcast by myself called Over the Culture, and it had different segments. I wanted to approach it like Letterman or Conan or something like that. Man, I wanted to just do something different, and there's a section of Over the Culture where it's basically the same format where whatever day the episode falls on, I would go from the beginning of time, probably to the early 1900s, of like what movies came out, what relevant albums came out, things in pop culture that happened on that day. And the more and more I was doing it, it was just like, damn, the 90s, like that was just such a sweet spot for pop culture for me, especially like coming of age years, man. And around that same time, Matt, he had a podcast with his buddy Aaron, and we're both doing
Oh yeah, I
our
remember.
own yeah, and we were
Hold on.
both doing our own shows, and we were talking about sharing each other's airspace, like being a guest on each other's shows. And the more we were talking about it, it was just like, man, like, how do you feel about just like doing another show? Because I was already thinking about like doing something like solely about the 90s, because I really like I had a good time talking about that stuff when it got to the 90s. The 80s had some good stuff too, but it's like, man, it'd be fun to do a show just on the 90s. And
Yeah.
like
D-
I'm glad he accepted, man, because like I said, we were talking about this stuff in the 90s.
And
Yeah.
don't you think? Oh, go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, like me and Steve grew up, we went to high school, junior high together, and we were roommates in college. And a lot of we grew up in the '90s. Obviously, a lot of our favorite stuff was from the '90s, even before we really were like good friends. But I remember like sitting in our dorm in college, and like Steve, to his credit, introduced me to a lot of like movies that are my favorite movies now, that are '90s movies, and we always just vibed on just pop culture in general. So when he asked me to do it, I mean, I was honored anyway, because he's really good at broadcasting, if you want to call it that, or podcasting or whatever. But it's fun, man. And it is like the way when we thought about doing the show and like watching shows from the 90s, I think it's really a fun thing to do, because people that grew up in that time, or even the movies, you remember these things and you almost put them up on a pedestal. And it's fun to see if they deserve that, or if it's like a movie like Twister, where you're like, I watch this every day for a summer, and then you watch it and you're like, this is a giant piece of garbage. So it's fun to see where
Yeah.
those things stack up a little bit.
It's fantastic. And I think you guys started doing it at the right time because, like, in the early aughts, the 90s were still recent enough where they were kind of an afterthought for a lot of people. Like, it was, just recent. And then now it's kind of like how the 80s were in the mid
Yeah.
aughts, where it's very nostalgic on one side and also still recent enough where you can build off of that. I mean, the 90s are just so interesting because you kick off with Vanilla Ice, you leave with Eminem, you have Jurassic Park, Titanic, and then you have just the technological advancements, I think, and the pop culture shifts. Where just there's just so much going on. I think more than any other decade that you can think of. Um, and when you guys do a show, how do you decide? Do you just let like the date dictate how that runs? Like, how do you try to decide like criteria for each episode going in?
It's the same format as Over the Culture was, and we release every Thursday, and I send out a list of all the things that happen on that Thursday or that date in the 90s, whether it's a movie, an album, what sitcoms, what episodes of sitcoms. And sometimes it's hard because, like, man, I really don't want to skip over that episode, but damn, like, we got to talk about that episode. So sometimes it does get tough.
Yeah, it's you guys do such a great job though, and I feel like every episode because I listen to all the shows. There's always that one moment where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, I remember that, and it kind of takes you down a wormhole, a rabbit hole, whatever, of like something going on. Um, you guys talk
I think
about
that
wrestling a lot. What's
I
that?
think that feeling though, that like, oh, I remember that. That's like the genesis of the show. That's like the nucleus of the show, really, is like getting people to feel that again. I feel hopefully a lot of people that listen to it, live these things and want to listen to it. And I think it is, like you said, educational for people that didn't, but
Yeah,
that's the fun part. Like when you watch something that you saw, or even that you just kind of remember, you're like, oh, this show, like a show like Herman's Head, for example. A lot of people don't even remember that. Maybe you don't even know what it is, but it was this show that if once I saw it, I was like, oh, this was a thing. I totally remember watching this, and like just having that memory come back. It's really fun, man.
yeah.
Steve does a really good job of like making those lists. He picks really good stuff. So all credit to him on that.
That's what I'm talking about. It's like I haven't seen a show that comes close to yours on the 90s that has that aha moment where you remember that. Um, and I want to ask you guys this. Physical media is on the rise. Believe it or not, there's actually been a surge in DVD purchases and even VHS. Like it's up on the up and up. What's your thoughts on that? Are you proponents of owning physical media?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
This
I mean,
this guy
Steve
had a
thought
library. Yeah.
I've
the
being
library.
broke killed my physical media collection, but at one point I mean, I had a video, like a blockbuster video level collection of movies that,
Oh
I
wow.
mean, Steve can maybe speak to this too, but I don't think there were a lot of like duds in it. There was a couple that we just were random buys because
Herman's Head.
I used to just go to like Best Buy on a Tuesday because that's when, new movies came out. And I'd blow my money, just be like, oh, what's this? And just try it. So, but
Yeah.
definitely Steve and my buddies got to reap the benefits of that because I mean, man, it was a wall's worth of DVDs that unfortunately, because I had to move to different places and was broke, that was the first thing that got sold, and it's heartbreaking. I wish I had it back.
Oh yeah.
And I hate that. Yeah.
How many? What was your collection up to? I mean, we're talking like over 1,000 DVDs, kind of thing.
That
About
lot.
1,000.
That seems like
That
a
seems like a
big
lot.
number, but I
Yeah.
feel like it was probably, if I remember right, I probably had about 600 DVDs.
That's a lot. That's a good
Yeah.
collection.
Yeah. And that
The
was like the all the anything that had different versions too. And that's what I miss about physical media, especially DVDs, and what kind of made me want to get into filmmaking or whatever. And anyway, they used to have a lot of behind the scenes stuff. You get to watch a documentary about how they made a movie when you bought a movie, and it was like part of the movie experience at home is you get to watch the movie, and then there was all these cool things that, some DVDs didn't have it, but a lot of them did, and I miss that part of it too because we don't get commentary tracks anymore, which I
no.
used to love to watch with the movies, and we don't get these behind the scenes things like I remember, like, I'm a big nerd. So when Lord of the Rings came out and was released, they released like these extended edition DVDs
Yeah.
that, I mean, there
Yeah.
must have been 4 hours of documentaries on it to watch that were alongside of these crazy long movies. And it's something I don't think they do that anymore.
No, that's one of the proponents that you see a surge in physical media. And Christopher Nolan talked about this, where one is some things aren't streaming at a certain time. Like it just happened with Cocoon, where you just couldn't find it anywhere. You had to like physically own it. And so like sometimes because of licensing and rights or whatever swap hands, you lose things. They become like dead films almost. And the other one was what you said is there's these extra features. Like we just did a show. You guys remember the movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, of course?
Cost with the
The
Coster.
cast with a zero English accent.
Yep.
You guys remember Everything I Do it for you, the music video?
I
Can't
remember the
find
Brian
it
Adams.
anywhere. Can't find it. It was on MTV and VH1 like twice, three times an hour back when that movie was out with Brian Adams in the woods and everything.
I remember that.
Because the rights changed or whatever, they removed it from everywhere. So you just can't find it. But we did find it on the show at the last stop of the internet. Some website in Turkey hosted it, and it could have killed my computer, but it didn't, and I was able to get it. But it's like things like that. Things that you love as a kid. Um, they just you need that physical media for a lot of that. It's not available.
Sometimes they came with posters too. Like,
Yeah.
of course there's
Yes.
the, Easter eggs and stuff like that, but like, you
Yep.
could also use them as decor. Like, have the CDs color coordinated. Word to John Witherspoon.
Where did you? Yeah. The um the news this week. You guys talk about wrestling a lot. I want to touch base on this. I know we talked about it a little bit before we went live. Vince McMahon. What's the deal? Is he you see him walking away from this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's too old and too ingrained, right?
Well, Matt, I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, he had to step aside and like name somebody else as the president of WWE for a while for
Yeah,
some
for like a
other
year.
scandal. I don't remember what that specific scandal was, but maybe it was a hush money thing, but
Yeah.
he orchestrated a way for him to remove himself from the business, did so, and then as soon as all the heat died down, which it's going to do because that's a news cycle now, is that people will forget anything in about a week because something else crazy is going to happen.
Right.
So, maybe hopefully they'll scrub these crazy texts that we're all reading. But I think, like Steve said, Vince is going to Vince. And I think, maybe it's not going to be immediate. He's not going to just walk away and it's going to be fine. But Yeah, I think Vince McMahon's gonna be just fine.
I think so. And what you're talking about is there was an investigation, from what I remember, at WWE right before I think they merged with UFC or whatever that deal was. And
Yeah.
he left the day-to-day operations as president, but then he came back like a year later, just what you said. People forget. And I feel like he's such a legend. And again, I'm not siding with him if allegations are true and he did terrible things, because that's inexcusable. But for the historical, as a big fan, since I was a kid, I feel like he's just so ingrained. It's not gonna hurt his brand in the bigger picture of everything.
He is so relevant in pop culture, man. Like I really don't know what my life would be like if it wasn't for Vince McMahon. And like I don't know, that's
Yeah, right.
a stand statement to make, but it's facts, man. Like
It's
he like
facts.
of course wrestling existed before him, but he perfected it. Like, and in my opinion, he's the greatest promoter, better than Don King, better than the
Oh,
other guy
sure.
that does boxing, um, PT Barnum, all of those guys, man.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And to take that brand from what it was before, if you look at like the early ages of the WWF in the late 70s, early 80s, I mean, to have by WrestleMania 2 and 3 that kind of phenomenon, it's I haven't seen anything like it. I mean, that stuff usually takes decades to work up.
And it's still
They
here. I
could
mean, it didn't diminish. It just got bigger and bigger to the point where, I mean, I know he got bought out, but it's just like he got bought out because it's that big. You know, he's such a success.
Oh yeah. And to your credit, it was on the news, Netflix. Did you guys hear about that Netflix $5 billion deal?
They're streaming
with
Raw,
Raw.
I think, or
Yeah, to stream Raw, 5 billion over 10 years. I mean, that just to pay that billion, 5 billion. I mean, you could buy a few football teams with that money just to stream a program, like a little arm of, not little, but an arm of that juggernaut. Is that just like goes to show you how big it is and how much he's built up that company, you know?
And I believe he bought the company from his dad for 1 million initially.
Yeah, I think
So
so.
he's just a great businessman. And I mean, the
Yeah.
character he got to play, especially like in the Attitude Era that we all know and love, is just you can't erase that. Like you can't without Vince McMahon. Would there be wrestling the way it is now? You know, I don't think there would be.
not at all, man. Like his blueprint is copied, man. Like you could really teach a Vince McMahon course, like in a business kind of deal, man, or marketing, man.
Oh, for sure.
But it does
Like
suck
even when
that
he
these things come up, though, right? It does suck that these things keep coming up and people are like coming out with these allegations. But it's just wild that like we were watching him when we were little boys, just like renting wrestling tapes. Me and Steve went to the same video rental place and would get these free wrestling tapes,
Was it a West Coast Video or a Blockbuster?
video connection,
Oh,
video connection,
all
yeah.
right. Okay.
Ohio proud. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, what else is around that has withstood this length of time, you know? And that's because of him. I mean, it's not like he's not has a hand in it. It's because he's that good at it. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's crazy. It's almost Simpsons-esque where it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's been here the whole time. I can barely remember a world without it, without Vince McMahon.
Yeah, no, of course not. And I remember, yeah, as a kid, you'd go and you would like spend 30 minutes deciding if you're going to get like WrestleMania 7 or SummerSlam 90. And then you're like, yeah, we're going to get, can I get two of them? And it was just like, it's such an experience. And it's withstood the test of time. They're still fun to watch. I mean, you guys revisit those old ones sometimes, right?
Oh yeah.
They never get
Yeah.
old, man.
They
Like
never get
those
old.
guys were my comic book heroes, man. Like, cause
Yeah.
I didn't grow up like reading like Batman and all of that stuff. Like, I would get the WWF magazine like
Yep.
religiously every month, man.
Oh yeah. No, me too. I got the magazine and like, I mean, Macho Man was my guy. I mean, I had the Slim Jim like cutout in my room, like him with like it was like the orange and yellow, like the crazy outfit, the Slim Jim outfit.
The Slim Jim outfit.
Do you
the
remember the
one-
Slim Jim commercials? He
Oh, it
had
was
like
so
the
intense.
colors,
Cowboy
the
hat.
Slim Jim colors.
And
Oh,
like of all the
yeah.
Ooh,
of all the
yeah.
wrestlers that passed, he's like the one I want to meet the most. Like I
Yeah.
wish I could have met.
Yeah, what a life. What a life. So yeah, we'll see what happens with McMahon. I mean, it looks like the chick was, from what I'm reading, was looking for work, and one thing led to another, and yada yada, and she comes out. So, I mean, he's
There's
got
other
the
ways of
money.
making money. I don't. Yeah.
That's a red flag, like looking for work, maybe looking for money, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. But how often do you guys revisit your old shows? Do you like, I mean, are you one of those podcasts that listen to everything, or do you like not listen to yourself? How does that process work?
I hate my voice and I have to edit the shows. So
Do you really?
my actual ingestion of our show is usually through the editing process. Um, but sometimes I will. I mean, I've definitely when I'm in the car, I'll if it's on like if I'm listening to something, it goes off. Like if my show comes on automatically, or like sometimes I'll just click on it and see, just like go into a random time in the timeline and listen to it. And I'll call Steve sometime and be like, dude, I was laughing so hard at this, and I hate to do that because it sounds douchey, but uh, yeah, sometimes it even catches me off guard just to like listen to us. But I hate my voice. I think everybody's like that. But when I hear it, I'm like, ugh, just
Yeah,
sounds.
you have a great voice, but I get it. I can't listen to it either. I'm
I don't
to
get that.
myself.
It's weird. It's a weird like thing in reality where I talk all the time and it like I'm fine, but if I played this back, I'd be like, I gotta turn this off.
I got what is this guy doing?
Ugh.
I definitely listen to the audio on the first day it comes out, but as far as the video, it's kind of the same with me because I'm the like social media guy. So when I'm cutting them down throughout the week, that's my way of watching the playbacks.
Okay.
I think we've evolved, man. Like it's
You
honestly, it's
have.
kind of hard for me to watch those early ones because we didn't have good mics at the time.
Yeah.
I was like sitting on a grandpa pillow with no background, no green screen. It would just be me sitting in my bed, and you could see the big black pillow behind me. Didn't have a ring light, none of that, man. But
It,
at the same time, it does show growth.
it does.
Like
It does.
you know,
I'm with you too. I debate that like once a week on this show. When we first started, it was like really bad mics and audio, and I'm like, maybe I just want to archive them and just take them down. But it, and the other side of the token, it's kind of nice to see that evolution. And you guys, I mean, with the merch and the social media presence, I just think you guys are on top with everything you're doing. And
Thanks, man.
I love that you have the
appreciate
music
that, bro.
track underneath the audio, which I don't remember hearing another podcast that does it. It kind of everything's better with music, as you know, and it's just I don't know. It's kind of a nice like chill thing that you guys do, which is cool.
That's all Steve too. That he had that because I was like, I don't know, but you're right. There is something like calming about it. It's just like soothing almost.
And it makes it kind of harder to
know?
turn it off. You just kind of like I don't know. It's something subconsciously where you just it's soothing. I guess is the way to say it.
I feel like it's a payoff because it's like, okay, if you view us on YouTube, you're able to listen to us and see us. If you just get the audio, here's a little bonus. Like here's some nice jazzy tunes.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
some jazzy tunes.
yeah,
The I put together. I wanted to go through this, Matt. I know you're hungry, so I'm going to blow through
Oh,
this.
we don't have to rush, but
Oh, we're rushing, baby. The
we're
90's
growing bored,
quiz,
guys.
definitive 90's quiz. There's nobody better to answer these questions than the two maestros sitting in front of me today.
I love this. This is like a great ego stroke too. This is fantastic.
There's no one better than you
What was
guys.
that guy who used to Actors Studio? That guy?
James Lipton.
James
Yeah.
Lipton. He used to be a pimp, by the way.
Did he
He's
really?
so- Shut up.
Like an
Man, I
actual
shit you
pimp?
not. That bitch better have my money.
Bitch,
have
what
my
is
money.
your favorite word?
Bill Clinton called me today, former president, and he said, "That happened in the 90s podcast is the best podcast ever. And he was really just adamant about how his presidency fails in comparison to that
Oh
happened in the 90s
wow.
show. It's just that
Well,
great. I just want to stroke this ego. But no, I
thank you.
genuinely love your show and I think it's great. Um and I want to so here's how this will work. I'll give you guys a hint, but I don't think I'm going to need to. I think you're going to know every one of these questions.
Oh God, this is a lot of pressure though. I don't like this. We get in there, we're so-called experts, but we're also potheads. So, sometimes
Which I
the
love.
memory ain't great, but
I love. Um okay, I'm going to start off with the softball question here. What is the biggest selling music album of the 90s?
the biggest selling music album of the 90s.
Yeah. And I'll give you a hint. It is a very 90s album. When you think of pop culture and you think of 90s music, this woman, this female artiste, absolutely comes to mind. And she was birthed in the 90s. So it's not like, you know, Whitney Houston or something that was around in the 80s. It's came out of the 90s.
I
My
mean, it
first
can't
guess,
go for it, Steve.
my first guess was Britney.
Damn, I was gonna say that
I would have
too.
said Britney too, but it's actually Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill
Oh no,
In the 90s?
no.
in the 90s.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
I would have thought Baby One More Time or the Bodyguard
Yeah.
soundtrack, to be honest with you, because that was up there.
I was
But
gonna
no,
say Backstreet Boys because I just felt like they were like the wave of just girl love that they got in the 90s. My wife's one of them, but that's crazy. Alanis,
don't quote me on this, but I think Backstreet was like number two, which makes sense. Um,
you know.
okay, biggest selling pay-per-view event of all time happened in the 90s. I'm sorry, biggest pay-per-view event of the 90s um, happened in the later part of the decade. What was that pay-per-view event? I'll give you a hint. It was a boxing event.
Hmm.
Mike Tyson, Vander Holyfield.
That's what it was, sir. The bite fight.
Oh, okay.
June 28th, 1997 at the MGM Grand Garden Arena, which I remember not watching that, but riding my bikes at night after. And our buddy Jared came out, was like, he bit his ear. He bit his ear. And we're like, what? It was huge. Like people were talking about that leading up to the fight. It was a big deal. You guys remember that? The
Oh
Tyson?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, during the time, like it was huge.
I mean, they played the
That
clip
was
of him like doing it on Sports Center. It was like hourly. They were
Oh,
like, "Here, we got to
gotcha.
check in. Here it is again. Watch it in super
Oh,
slow mo." Just like I just remember, I can still see it. If I was a good
oh
artist,
yeah.
I could draw the freeze frame.
I love Tyson. Oh, that was great. Okay. How many Americans tuned in to watch the O.J. Simpson trial verdict?
Oh my, everybody.
This is a
it's
tough
definitely in
one.
the million.
Yeah. I
What's
mean,
that?
It's definitely in the millions.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's 95 million.
right there.
Can you
Damn.
imagine that though? I mean, that's almost half of the country, people living here. And this is the 90s. This is not streaming or internet. So this is one household units tuning into this. It's insane.
I mean, there's those pictures that they show of like Times Square. It's like it's like filled with people looking at that big screen watching it. But it's crazy because
It's
I don't
crazy.
remember a lot from that. Like, I can't, like, I don't have that good of a memory. But I can tell you exactly the class I was in,
Yeah.
the name of the teacher whose class I was in, Mr. Hodak, history class,
Kodak.
Harrisburg Junior High School, and this dude just let us watch it, and I still remember that just being like, "What? What?
What?
No, what?"
I remember being in wood shop. No, I was in gym class in the locker room and they played that on like the loudspeaker, like from the radio. And everyone's like,
Wow.
"Oh my gosh, what's going on?" And I remember thinking like, wow, like in school over the loudspeaker, it was We haven't seen anything like that since.
And we
I mean,
never will.
no,
There
never
will
will.
never be anything of that magnitude, like to the point where you're stopping the NBA finals. People's,
Right.
my grandma missed her stories because of that.
You miss your stories because yeah, they had to stop the finals and then they had it like in the remember that it was in the screen, but like the OJ chase took the and that chase was a perfect storm. I mean, there during the chase, people crafted signs and the Domino's, I forget the numbers, but like Domino deliveries like skyrocketed. It was like their highest, like it outbeat the Super Bowl with people calling to order food because they didn't want to leave the TV. It was like it was crazy.
The
Uh,
juice was loose, dude.
the
I mean, you
juice
had
was
to
loose,
tune
man.
in.
The juice was loose. What year in the 90's was the World Wide Web first introduced to the public? I mean, obviously the internet's been around since like the 70's, but when did the World Wide Web first come out to the masses?
I'm gonna say 96.
Okay.
I'm gonna say 94.
Believe it or not, it's 91.
Okay, well, I wasn't of the
You were an AOL
economical.
kid, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah, I was.
Yeah. See,
Those
I didn't,
CDs, those
we had
free
AOL
hours.
and I didn't realize you could get, like, my family didn't know you could get alternatives to AOL until like 2001. But, like AOL was so smart out of the gate. They were like, here's our CDs, you have to use it. You need us. You need us to access the internet. It's America Online. And you're like, oh no, you don't. You could just get an internet provider and have like Yahoo or something. But they were
That's
like
sweet.
on there. They sent out your CD. Remember the CDs in the mail they would give you?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Plus, just being
they
able to
were
get
on
into
it.
chats. They see also our generation. We got to
Chats.
do those first like weird message board chat room things where we
Yeah.
were all doing it. We were all going on and faking who we were, doing little
I
pranks,
have a
doing little
private
things.
jet. My
Yeah,
name is Rich
exactly.
Richardson.
But man, what a weird time too. The internet was so young, like it was so all like non-functioning too. It was like only to chat, and maybe you
That
could
was it.
load like a booby pic or see like load some news about sports. That was
That was
really
it.
all I did.
There was that.
Such a playground for pedophiles looking back
Oh
on it.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I should have gotten poached a lot, but I was out there just
Poached.
chatting just chatting away with whoever would chat with me, Steve. I thought I was chatting with hot babes, but it probably was like
It
a
was Vince
50-year-old
McMahon,
dude.
probably
This
shitting
little
on you.
dumbass.
There was that grace period, like late 90's, where not every teacher had the internet. And I remember in high school, they were like, you cannot use the internet as a source. So
Yeah.
I would like use it as a source and be like, yeah, I read this book. And it was like this sweet, sweet spot where you could plagiarize book
But
reports
switch a
that you had no
word.
intention of doing.
Yeah.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, just and also, do you remember like when AIM, like the actual chat program, and like how excited you got if like a girl that you liked that
Oh,
you'd be waiting for that noise, right? Or waiting for
you-
whatever, and you're like,
you'd come
how
back and your
exciting
away
is it?
message had
Yeah,
that chick being like, hey, and you're like, oh, thank
I love.
I'm gonna get laid tonight.
Yeah,
God. I
I'm
loved
gonna
AIM,
see them
man.
boobies. So it's gonna be so nice.
So good. Okay, next question. The Dream Team won Olympic gold in which year's games?
92.
Steve knows. By the way,
I
do you
mean,
prefer Steve or Steven, sir? I don't want to assume.
Oh, Steve.
Okay. You're not one of those guys that's like, it's Jonathan, please. It's Jonathan. Okay. Which actor, gentlemen, was paid $1 million, the first child star to ever do so, and for what film? It happened in the 90's.
I mean, it has to be Macaulay, right? And Home Alone 2?
I would have said Home Alone too. It was My Girl, believe it or not. But we'll take Macaulay.
Okay.
Interesting.
By the way, I saw the Christmas episode you had. Uh, your cohort was shitting on Home Alone. Well, like,
He
what's that
shits
all
on it.
about?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for
What?
speaking up for that. I take issue with that and Mrs. Doubtfire that he's not a fan of that.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Notice he's not here today.
Well,
Yeah.
you'd be
It's
getting a
deliberate.
thorough talking to from two gentlemen here, but that's crazy.
Thanks for listening to the show. But yeah, Home Alone. How do you not like Home Alone? Come on.
I just
I had to
watched
play that
two.
back. Like,
Like,
did he really say
sorry,
that?
Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Steve.
I just couldn't believe. Like, look, man, it might not make you laugh. You might think it's corny, but it's like we have an unofficial rule on our show. There is like no slander on the Culkster. He
Don't.
is the goat of child actors, and there have been some great child actors, but like
Yeah.
Macaulay, man, like he had a run like Jordan in the
He's
early
ground
90s.
zero. Oh, he's the best. Richie Rich. I mean, Uncle Buck. He's
The Good
Good Son.
Son
good son.
with the other 90s legend Elijah Wood, who,
Yes.
also, but he wasn't there in the 90s. Macaulay
He
just
was it.
towering over everybody.
Home Alone is the definitive Christmas film, and when that came out, seeing that in the theater, you're like, there's nothing like this. This is nonstop. I mean, Joe Pesci, like, it's just such a great show.
It's still funny. Like I watched
It
two.
is funny.
Like I always watch one of them during Christmas time. I watch two, and I'll go on record a couple of things. But Daniel Stern in Home Alone 2, the scene where he grabs the sink and is electrocuted and turns into a skeleton, I mean, you can't get better comedy
It's great.
at all. It's just so funny. And I did see a funny thing that it was just like literally a couple days ago. They were talking about Joe Pesci's involvement in it and how he was like, when he read scripts that weren't Scorsese scripts, he would have to throw a fuck into the language no matter what in order to get into his characters. So he'd be like, well, hey, fuckhead, like, and that's not going to be in the movie. So in order to get around his need to curse, when you watch Home Alone, every time he gets hurt, he's like, Razza, Frazzin, Razzin. He went over that with
Oh,
Daniel Stern
yeah.
and was like, I'm going to have my own language so I can curse. And this is how I'm going to curse. And that's why he did that. And so he could avoid
You're
saying fuck
right.
on a PG movie.
Because he does, if you do listen, and Home Alone 2 as well. It's a lot of like, it's a lot of, non words under there.
Yeah. But
Home
then
Alone
you'll
2, I
get,
love too. I mean, I know it's a different ball game, but Home Alone 2, even if you took out the shenanigans at the end, that whole movie is still a fun ride with Tim Curry and the whole hotel dynamic. Like that could be the movie, and it could be not Home Alone, and it would be a fun ride regardless. Like it's good, you know.
and you still get great Pesci lines like, nothing would thrill me more than to shoot you. And that's a guy saying that to a kid. And I mean, that's the 90s right there. That's why I love it so much.
Did you ever
No
see
one
that
better than
Family
I.
Guy where they're like, and next we're watching Home Alone with competent burglars, and they come in, they're like, don't touch the door, it's hot. Oh yeah, somebody put water on the stairs. Just don't walk on them. And then Macaulay comes out. He goes, "Hey guys, I have a tarantula." And they shoot him. They're like, "No witnesses. Okay, let's rob this place." Okay,
He never
Should've
called the
got it.
cops, and like it's just one of them things. It's just
movie's
like
got a
I
movie,
didn't
right?
even. The movie's got a movie.
You're right, Steve. He never called the cops. He's like, he took it in his own hands.
I mean,
Movie
as
could
a
have been done.
we could go hours about that. Like how much I would have freaked out as a kid if somebody even tried to get into my house a little bit. I would have ran away. I would have ran to an
Oh, I would do
adult.
that now if somebody
Yeah,
tried to
well,
break
yeah,
in. I would do that
exactly.
in 2024. You're absolutely right. That's a good topic at some point too. Okay, biggest selling video game of the 90s was
Ooh,
this
that
one was very
tough.
surprising to me.
Wow, that was
Man, there's
tough,
so
man.
many. I want to say it was GoldenEye or something like that, but
Man, I I was thinking it could be that or Super Mario 3 or Mortal Kombat, but it might not be either of those.
I'll give you a
uh,
hint. And I would have said my first thought was Super Mario Brothers 3, which is arguably the best game ever. It's not. It is a Nintendo game that was also on Game Boy.
Tetris.
Pokemon.
That's it. It was Tetris,
Oh man,
which you could never
That makes
beat
sense.
that game, but some kid apparently just beat it in like West Virginia or something. Like it was made to not be, you couldn't beat it unless like AI did it. but apparently some kid did it recently. It was in the news. I think he probably listened to Happen in the 90s and that inspired him to play that game.
The one kid in West Virginia that didn't give into incest.
West Virginia.
Congrats.
Who's the richest person
Congrats.
in West Virginia? Tooth Fairy. Okay. Next question. Happened in the 90s. Where was SummerSlam 1990? What city did it take place in?
Steve.
That one was that the one in Jersey?
You're not, it wasn't in Jersey, but you're in the same ballpark. You're close.
Philadelphia?
Yes. It was
Where
at the
you-
Spectrum in
where the
Philadelphia.
Sixers used to play.
Yeah, exactly. I saw two WWF, nothing like SummerSlam, but just, you know how they did the events at the Spectrum back in the day. And it was one of those like multi-purpose arenas and stuff like that. But when SummerSlam came there as a kid growing up in Philadelphia, that was like Disneyland coming to town or something. It was like, oh my gosh, can you believe, they're coming here? And it was like wild, to have.
That was the one. That was the one with the double main event, right? With the Earthquake and Hogan, and
Yes.
then
Yep.
Rick Rude and Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah. Throwing down. Rick Rude. Good call.
The ravishing one.
He very
We
ravishing.
love Rick Rude and Happened in the 90s.
I just got a few more here. Are you guys still good?
We're good.
What was the name in the 90s television show Blossom of Blossom's friend/neighbor?
Six.
Six. And Six was like the Kimmy Gibbler comic relief, right? That was like her purpose. Like she was like the Urkel.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
No
that
one
was
was
a
like
decade
Urkel,
of the
though.
neighbors.
Yeah. What's your policy on Blossom, guys? Are you fans? Is it something you
watched it.
like?
I watched it because it was the follow up of Fresh Prince. Like that was my routine on Mondays. I think a lot of America on Mondays. It would be
Always.
Fresh Prince, then Blossom, and then 9 o'clock it would be
Yep.
primetime wrestling that would eventually become Monday Night Raw.
Yes.
But watching it now as an adult, it's actually like a solid show, man.
It's not
Yeah.
bad. I revisited for the first time since it came out after Mayan Bialik was on just on some podcasts, and I was like, oh, I should like revisit that. It's been like 30 years. And it was a solid show. They touched on things like drug abuse and like things that a lot of those sitcoms in those slots weren't really touching on. And I give them credit for that.
Yeah, in my opinionation, it was a great show. So,
over
to
the
eat
summer,
it-
we had a hat trick of Blossom. Remember that? Like
A hat
think-
trick?
like
just-
all of
Oh,
I think
Jeopardy.
all of August. We just every week, man, we did Blossom because it was
Oh,
still
yeah.
summer and like there were no other options. I was like, I guess we got to do Blossom again.
Well,
Gotta
that was
do
like
Blossom
we
again.
were in there with the sweet spot where like the older brother, that's when he was like relapsing, I believe was one of the episodes. Like they dealt with that.
Yeah, he was addicted. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a great show. And again, they came up with a great phrase, in my opinionation, that I just feel like needs to be applauded because it's so catchy.
Whoa.
Yeah, the show was episode 132 on Happened in the 90s. Blossom is a Runaway with Ren and Stimpy. You can check that out on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts, kids. And then you came back on the Larry Sanders episode 134. And then 133, the Dear Keenan and Kel. It's Me, Blossom. You guys did a trifecta there. I love it.
For some reason, they started early that year than other sitcoms.
Yeah, and the
I
summer
wonder why
it's
that is.
dusty. The summer is like a barren wasteland for TV shows in the 90s. It's like when we have to pick episodes, that's always we're like, we got
The
I don't know
barren
what we're gonna
wasteland.
do here. We gotta find a MacGyver or something to
Well,
pull
Mac-
in.
Salute your shorts. Happened in the 90s. What was the highest watched television show of the 90s? Highest number of people that tuned in.
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld, indeed. Highest paid athlete of the 90s?
I don't think it was Jordan.
Shaq? No.
I didn't think it was Jordan either, but it was Jordan. I had to like double
was it?
check that too.
Okay.
It was close, but yeah, I didn't think Jordan was paid all that much for what he did, for what he was worth. I know he made his money in endorsements a lot, but it was Jordan, believe it or not.
And rightfully so.
Highest selling car of the 90's. This was surprising to me. It was the highest selling car like 6 or 7 years. I'll give you a hint. It's an American made car. It's not like a Camry or anything.
Dodge Caravan.
I like where
Ford
your head's
Taurus.
going. Ford Taurus. Steve knows.
Dang. See,
I used to have one, and it lasted like 2 weeks.
Did it really?
My grandma got it from a police auction, and
Oh, nice.
yeah,
There's probably
so
coke
yeah,
in the. If it came from the cops, it was probably like a DUI car or something.
couple of
possibly.
miles of crack in the back.
Yeah,
Probably
makes
why
for a
the
good
engine all
Saturday
fucked up.
night.
Did it overheat, Steve? Because I had a Ford Taurus for like real. It was actually in LA also, but somebody just gave me a junker and immediately overheated. I mean,
Yep,
immediately.
that's
The
exactly what
Ford Taurus.
happened.
Happened in the 90's. Biggest selling musical artist of the 90's. So it's not Alanis Morissette. That was the biggest selling album. But who made the most money, sold the most, units overall throughout the 90's?
It's a solo artist,
It's a
or
solo artist, and I'll give you a hint. The sales, it's a she, were propelled in part, in a very large part, by a very popular movie. There was a song she did attached to a specific film, and
oh
that really helped drive it up.
Whitney?
yeah, it's Whitney.
I would have said Whitney. It's Celine Dion, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
guess Titanic did happen in the 90s. So
But
yeah.
Whitney would have made sense because I think The Bodyguard was the biggest selling soundtrack of all time.
It is.
Yeah. So,
Selling, yeah.
yeah.
I was
but,
actually going to say Mariah Carey for some reason, just because she has #1 hits. But dang,
Mariah
Celine.
makes $2.5 million a year from the Christmas song every year.
God bless her.
Talk about
I love
smart.
that song.
That's great. Happened in the 90's. In 1992, then presidential candidate Bill Clinton played what instrument on the Arsenio Hall show?
Sax, baby.
Sax,
Sexy
baby.
phone.
I watch Jason Voorhees on Arsenio Hall show like once a week on YouTube. I watched it so much, it just like populates as a suggestion. So I'm like, yeah, we're watching this again. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-mm.
I know which one you're talking about. I haven't actually watched it.
He
You
just
need to
comes
check out
out.
the
He doesn't say
wrestling.
a word the entire interview. He just comes out. And Arsenio, it's like a performance piece. He's just like, so, he's almost like doing stand up because he has Jason promoting Jason Takes Manhattan, which I think was 89. So it's not really 90's, but I don't know. It's just good. It's gold. It's gold. It's like when Vanilla Ice came on Arsenio Hall. That was very cringe. You're like watching him and you're like, Arsenio Hall is keeping this alive, man. He's just
You can
keeping
see
the
him
show
shrinking.
alive.
Yeah.
It was bad. Okay, happened just a few more here. Happened in the 90's. In 1990, George H.W. Bush declared, I'm president of the United States, and I'm not going to eat any more. What? What was he not going to eat more of? It's a type of vegetable.
Broccoli.
Broccoli. It was broccoli.
Nice, man.
Good job, Mr. Getic. Happened in the 90's. Which fashion accessory, very popular in the 1990's, was invented by a high school shop teacher? I'll give you a hint. This fashion accessory had the genesis in the 90's and its demise in the 90's. You're not seeing this today. May or may not have mayhaps have caused some injuries. Might have been a little on the unsafe side.
Was
Slap
it
bracelet.
Slap bracelets.
Those were
I had a couple.
that shit. Yeah, I might still have some somewhere. I don't know if they'll slap anymore.
Slipped
But
your wrist open. Do you really? Oh, you got to
I
bring those
might.
out for happened in the 90's.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
do
All
a,
the
a
90s stuff.
oh. Okay. The highest selling hip hop album of the 90's was what?
Oh,
Uh,
it was
I'll give you a hint. It's not the Chronic or Doggy Style, which I thought would have been the Chronic. It's not.
it's before those albums.
It's after those albums.
After.
West Coast or East Coast, Matt?
It is East Coast.
I mean, I have to say Notorious B.I.G., but I don't think that's correct.
It's Life After Death.
Oh, okay. Well, there
But you know
go.
what? Let's put an asterisk next to that because I don't know if that includes sales after the 90s, which it may have. So we'll put a pin in that one.
I want a correct answer, so we're gonna count it.
We're
you
gonna
know?
Matthew was correct. Which actor hosted the Academy Awards a whopping 6 times during the 1990s?
Billy Crystal.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Dang it, Steve.
He was that dude.
Steve and Matthew, the hard drinking protagonist of Chumbawamba's 1997 hit Tub Thumping, has 4 different kind of drinks, according to the song's lyrics. What are those drinks?
It's a vodka drink. It's a whiskey drink. It's a. That's where I stopped. I think it's a vodka drink.
Takes a
It's
vodka
whiskey
drink, he takes a whiskey drink. He takes a cider drink, he takes a lager drink.
Okay. See, I didn't know. I didn't. I think that was one of those where you think you know the words, but I didn't know what he was saying in those last ones. I
Okay.
immediately just go to Danny boy.
Oh, Tub Thumping. Okay.
What an awful song.
3 more here. Who was the leading NFL rusher in the 90s?
Barry.
Yeah.
I would have said Barry too. It was Emmitt Smith.
Oh, but
Damn, Steve, come on,
I'm
man.
ashamed
You're a
of-
Dallas fan.
I thought Barry Sanders immediately. I was actually surprised.
I mean, it clocks that Emmitt Smith. He was right there, but I'm just disappointed in Steve because this man's a
Me too.
Cowboys fan.
Are you a
tough.
Cowboys fan?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
for
nice.
sure. Since I was a kid.
Oh, that's awesome. Matt, you're a Steelers fan?
Yep. But I actually will say that when I was a kid, I wasn't like when I grew up in Pennsylvania, I just was not into football like I was when I moved to Ohio. So before I moved to Ohio, I was actually a Dallas Cowboys fan because they were always the winners.
Yeah. Oh, every year as a kid, it's like
In
Cowboys,
fact,
Bills.
If I could find my 5th grade picture from it was when I moved to Ohio. That was the first year I moved there. The outfit that I showed up to first day at Perrysburg Woodland Elementary is a cowboy shirt with Tasmanian Devil with cowboy shit on, and then Cowboys Zubaz pants. And nobody knows what that is. Like,
Zubaz.
Zubaz was like zebra print, but with like colors in it.
Oh, I had them. I had the purple ones. They
Yeah.
were with the purple. You always had like the simple colored shirt, and then like the pants would accompany that, and it was wild, man. I know which one you're talking about.
Zubaz, dude. I'm telling you, that's what we need to make come back, Steve. That's the next.
Zubaz needs to be your mission.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the Steelers, Mike Tomlin, probably the best coach in our lifetime just for having a winning record like every year. He's just so consistent.
I love him, but I also will say that hasn't won a goddamn playoff game in almost a decade. So
it's time.
He has a fantastic record. He has a Super Bowl, and he's my coach, and I love him. But the Steelers, they live in that middle area where you always think they're going to do something, but you're a Philadelphia fan, I'm sure, Matt.
Yeah,
so
I know. I get
you
the
know all about
heartache
it.
for sure. Okay, 2 more here. In 1990, Jesse Ventura became the first actor from the movie Predator to serve as governor. What state did Jesse the Body govern?
Minnesota.
Oh yeah.
Salta. Okay. Last one here. 1998. Who became the only rapper alive to have 2 first consecutive #1 Billboard 200 albums within the same year?
Dark Man X, baby.
That's
R.I.P.
Great job, guys. That was a winning score, I think. I think you got most of those. You're the
I was
definitive
getting
90s
nervous.
guys. You know.
Yeah, we missed the first couple, and people watching this, they probably be like, "Man, why would we like go to them? Like, they're no experts on this shit."
Those were tough
So,
questions.
Yeah.
Subjective. I think a lot of them might have been juked stats. I don't know.
Alanis Morissette, there were that many bitter women in the '90s. Damn.
13.5 million. And if you think about it, there wasn't a chick alive that didn't have that album. Like looking back, everybody in junior high had that. They just like had to buy it. I don't
I
know
think I
why.
got that from Columbia House too. I think I even had an Atlanta.
Columbia
I think I
House.
had that.
Did you go to
Yeah.
the wall at the mall and get it? Sam Goody?
Dude, I mean,
You ought
for
to
a
know.
penny, I could get 10 albums, guys. So, they had eventually it came back to you, but they never got my money. So, thanks, Columbia House.
I remember I shoplifted Ice Cube's The Predator because they my I was at the mall and they like wouldn't sell it to me because it was parental advisory. Like there was some crusader at the register that's like, no. And I was like, oh, really? Okay, I guess I'll just put this back then.
I can't believe it. What's the
And I
statute of
Tipper Gore.
limitations?
I
Because
wasn't a
whatever store that
shoplifter.
is, they might be coming at you,
But I was
Clark.
like, I gotta have this. And I was like, worth it. It was worth it. No, it wasn't the Predator. It was Lethal Injection. I already had the Predator. It was his follow-up. And I was like 15 or something or 14. And they were like, no, not without your parents. And I was like, okay. And to this day, the only thing I feel bad about is that Cube didn't get his royalties from that purchase. But
Yeah.
Sam
I
Goody's
think
not
he's
doing
all
too
right.
well now, are they? Maybe they should have
No.
sold it.
If you're going to steal something, though, it's pretty cool that it was an Ice Cube album. Respect for that.
Yeah.
But you just had to hear the Don Mega, and I get that. I get
I
that.
wasn't a shoplifter either. The only two things I stole in my life were cigarettes once and that because of age. That was it. I was not, as a Catholic man, I had the guilt. So I was very broken up about doing that stuff.
Did
But
you
I was like, I
confess?
gotta have it, you
Did
know?
you confess your sins?
I did. I did. I think I'm good.
Me and
Before
my
we
buddies used to
go,
steal basketball cards
what's that? Did you steal basketball cards?
back in the day. Yeah.
Oh, nice. It'd be funny if you were like, yeah, last week I stole like 300 packs. I'm boosting them. Wait, are you guys baseball card guys?
I used to be for sure. I still have a bunch. I got them in the closet. I'm just waiting to find the ones that I can sell.
Well, at a future date, we do this segment called Baseball Card Roulette, where we pick random baseball cards that we have, and we'll tell the audience what we think that guy is doing if they weren't playing professional ball. So like, oh, this guy works at a hardware store, based on what they look like. I think you guys would be great because there's a lot of 90s cards in there. So I would love to have you on at some point.
Well, I got my collection. I showed Steve when I moved. I showed Steve a bunch that I found, but I got baseball, basketball, Ninja Turtle cartoon cards. If you remember those bad boys.
Oh yeah.
I got
Yeah.
it all. So
You still
I'm
have
into
them.
that. Oh yeah, they're in this. I have a closet right here. I'm sure I could dig them out, but yeah,
Nice.
call me when you're doing that. I'd love to do that.
Oh, for
Jose
sure.
Canseco, he would have been a jizz mopper for the nudie booths.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of like Dennis Eckersley, a lot of those like early
Oh.
90s guys, it's just like either porn star or like construction worker, one of those two,
We did Dennis Eckersley. I think it was like the 90 Fleer something card. No, it wouldn't have been 90. It was maybe it was. I don't remember, but we definitely did Eckersley, and it was yeah, he was definitely doing some porn.
That dude was
Before
a
we go,
hoss, though.
I know you guys have to go, but predictions for this weekend, NFL scores. What do you who's going to take it home, you think? We have
I want a
Ravens.
Midwestern Super Bowl.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you what I want.
Chiefs Lions would be great.
That's what I want. I don't want the Ravens to succeed because I'm a Steelers fan. I can't have them go to the Super Bowl. So I could care less about the AFC, but I want the Lions to win.
Yeah.
And I want them to win the Super Bowl and bring one home for Detroit because I just feel like Detroit, it's been a while, The Pistons won a championship when we were in college. And since Big Ben and Rip Hamilton and all those guys did that, they just need a win. So give the Lions some props.
Give them some props. They're overdue, and it's their time. How about you, Steve?
they suffered long enough, man. I want the Lions to pull it off. You know, and I'd prefer them facing the Chiefs because I know they already won 2 in recent years, but for most of our life, the Chiefs have sucked. I would
Yeah.
always tell people the Kansas City Chiefs are like the hacksaw Jim Duggan of NFL. It was kind of like, you know, when you see Jim Duggan in the Royal Rumble, it's like, oh, that's great, Jim, but you knew he wasn't going to win. That's how I felt about the Chiefs. Like, oh, they got a playoff spot, but you know they're not going to win.
Hey, you
This
gotta
shit.
win.
So,
It's kind of like
but
the Patriots growing up too. Remember when they had the old style uniforms? They were just like them and the Buccaneers were like
The
jokes.
Buccaneers, that was the joke.
Vinny
The
Testaverde.
Buccaneers had the most ugliest, that orange and
Oh,
white, and
the creamsicle.
that weird guy that they had on their helmet. That was
Yeah, he
like
was
a
supposed to be a pirate, but he had
yeah.
like the knife in his mouth and he was like orange. Like, what are they doing?
He looked like an English fop, like one of the like yes.
Oh no, the prickly proof is in the pudding. Oh gosh.
Uh,
Well, that's our show tonight. I just want to thank you guys for coming on, and please check out
thank you.
Happen in the 90s on YouTube, Happen in the 90s on Instagram, Happen in the 90s, and online, happeninthe90s.com. Steve and Matt, I hope we can do this again soon. It's always great to have you guys on.
Love it, man. Anytime.
All right,
Thanks for having us, bro.
you got it. Thanks, guys.